Hey all, Man in Black here. Just got back from the Fright Night remake. I've got some notes here because I have not really done anything since coming straight back. I haven't spent time Googling things. I haven't written a review yet. I'd like to write a text review, but in all honesty, I can't say for sure if I will. Mainly because, well, if you might not notice, I've been taking some time off because I'm writing my ass off right now. So, I'm writing something every day. Fright Night remake review might be one of them. You know, might be coming up one of these days. On a Wednesday, obviously, horror in our time. If not, then this might be the best you get, but you'll know when I do. Alright, let's start with the trailers. There was kind of a science fiction, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, Karate Kid. Not as exciting as it sounds. I'm not even sure what the name of the movie was. I'd like to think it was Rock'em Sock'em Robots. You know, the way they're doing Battleship and everything else. But in all honesty, I don't think it is. Because I think I would have noticed a title like that. I'm not even sure. I was watching the trailer. I just don't remember them mentioning a title. So I'm sure I'll sit down when I finish this vlog and I'll find the title everywhere. But other trailers. We had John Carter of Mars, or just John Carter. I think they were playing up the similarities to Conan. Maybe not. They were starting off, you know, him in the desert and such, and then went on to become more of a sci-fi thing. Am I going to watch this? Probably not. I have no familiarity with the character. I have barely read blurbs about him at all. I really have no familiarity, not much more interest. So I'm probably not going to see it. I'm not shitting on the movie. It looks halfway decent. Could be good, could be bad. But I'm probably not going to see it. Harold and fucking Kumar. Oh god. I heard people talking about a Harold and Kumar remake, sequel, and everyone agreed this was completely fucking unnecessary. Then I saw the trailer. I'd like to think they're going... Harold and Kumar... What is it? Harold and Kumar, a very 3D Christmas special, or some bullshit like that. Personally, I like my title better. It was Harold and Kumar Jump the Shark. They actually... It was kind of ironic, because I actually wrote down Harold and Kumar Jump the Shark in my notes. If you can read my handwriting, I wrote this in the dark. Harold and Kumar Jump the Shark. And as soon as I finished writing that, they started talking about how 3D, like satire, which isn't, this kind of satire that's not really funny or witty. Talking about how, didn't 3D jump the shark? Yeah, well, kinda did back in the 80s. I'll get on a little bit more on 3D anyway. Anyway, this is... Imagine if the writers of epic movie, date movie, disaster movie, Meet the Spartans, Vampires Suck, all those writers decided to write a Christmas movie. Might as well call it a Christmas movie. That's what this is, with Harold and Kumar. So it's a stoner's Christmas movie. Except less funny than that. I've never watched a Harold and Kumar movie. I've never watched a trailer that made me want to watch a Harold and Kumar movie. I don't think there's a... Well, there was a market for this movie? Really? Are they supposed to be the new... Is the maker of these... Are Harold and Kumar supposed to be the new Jay and Silent Bob? Because if so... No. No. Just no. 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 The Darkest Hour. That was actually one that was actually fairly interesting to me. It's an alien invasion movie. A little, every alien invasion movie has its little shtick. That's another one. It could be really good, it could be really bad. I mean, they showed us some fairly decent stuff, but that could very easily be the best scenes of the movie, and it could just look like shit otherwise. I mean, there really wasn't enough to go off of and say if this was going to be a good movie. That's one that I plan to Google when I finish this vlog. But it could potentially be pretty decent. That's really all the trailers I took note of. I think there was one or two more. I'm trying to think now. None of the movies in theaters now had a trailer. I don't know if that's normal or not. I guess it is kind of normal. I don't think there were any trailers of anything I was really looking forward to. Oh, that's right. The Thing remake, prequel, trailer. There's really nothing left to say about it. It's the same trailer we've all seen on the internet. I did not post my thoughts on it. It really doesn't tell us anything that we didn't already know. It's a prequel to the Thing remake. That's enough, really, to know. Anything else is just redundancy. That's what it felt like. That's why I've been so blah about watching these trailers anyway. I mean, maybe if once I get around to watching The Thing from Another World and The Thing, then I might be more excited about The Thing. But then again, The Thing and the Thing is the prequel to The Thing, which is kind of stupid. That's 2011 for you. That's trailers. Now, Fright Night was only showing in 3D. I don't know if that's my theater was only showing it in 3D or more like, well, it's probably going out soon. This is AMC Theater. They do tend to get rid of horror pretty quickly, but the only showing available is in 3D. Now, if you didn't notice, I wear glasses, so putting on glasses over my glasses just kind of makes me feel like a dumbass. I almost turned it, like I handed over my credit card, she handed me the glasses, and I almost canceled, but I went along with it. It was alright. It started to give me, started to edge toward headache a little bit to begin with. Way in the beginning of the movie. Trailers and such. Once the movie really got going and I got more interested in the plot and what I was seeing, the feeling sort of went away. The 3D, I mean, it worked. It was well done. I don't think it was necessary, and that pretty much wraps up my feeling on 3D in general. It works. It can be well done. Sometimes it's terribly done. Sometimes it's well done. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think that filmmakers realize you're basically watching these movies through sunglasses. So do something about it. I understand you don't want the movie to be drastically different, so much more brightness, but at the same time, you have one version of the movie for people watching it regularly. You have one version of the movie for people watching it with fucking sunglasses on. Brighten the damn movie up. I don't care if it's a scary movie. We are watching it with sunglasses. What's the point of having posters in a dark room when you can't make it out? I mean, I was sitting there, I saw what had to be a Magic the Gathering poster in this kid's room, and I'm like, wow, I wonder what it looks like. I want to take my 3D glasses off so I could see, and the room brightened up, but by that point they moved away from that wall, so kind of disappointing. But that's 3D for you. I don't think anybody who actually watches 3D movies regularly would tell you to expect any different. Difference is, this is the first 3D movie I've watched since 2001. Gotta be. Let's get on to Fright Night. I'm trying to also, well, the thing about Fright Night, people say it's an 80s movie made today. I'm going to agree with that. But there's the problem. See, for me, the 80s and early 90s had the best look for movies, especially for horror. A modern movie, the lighting and everything, it's more cinematic than it was then, and the downside to that is if it looks very cinematic, it doesn't look as real. And I think for horror, looking more real, even if it's lower quality, lower budget, to me, that is more likely to be scary than something that looks very cinematic. You know, stylized blood, you know, high contrast lighting. I mean, it was all excellent, you know, very well done, but you could never believe any of it was real. It was very clearly, very obviously a movie because it was made with modern filmmaking techniques. And I think that's a personal nitpick that might not affect a lot of viewers, but I think a lot of horror fans, a lot of classic horror fans, people who might have watched the original Fright Night, or people like me who would like to watch the original Fright Night, would see where I'm coming from with this. I mean, I look at Fright Night and I see it's a very average good 80s horror film. What I mean by that is it's everything you'd expect. The makeup is very 80s, the effects are very 80s, the plot is very 80s. And the difference between the remake and the original, really, besides a few things I'll get to later, is that the effects are very 2011. And I personally feel that drags the movie down. It's not a terrible, you know, I would hold off on recommending, or that it even causes me to dislike the movie. I think it makes it so the movie is a little less good than it could have been. So we've gotten to the 3D and the effects. That said, Fright Night Remake is one of the best remakes I have ever seen. The Fly was a really good remake. I haven't seen the original. Scarface was a really good remake. I haven't seen the original. Maybe that's a trend because I haven't seen the original Fright Night, but then again, I'm the idiot who still hasn't gotten around to seeing the original Dawn of the Dead. It's on my mile-long list of movies to see, so I'm sure that has something to do with my enjoyment of it. But then again, I know 80s movies. I've seen so many video reviews of Fright Night and Fright Night 2 that between the two, I can put together certain elements that I think were different. For example, Evil Ed was supposed to survive in the original. He was beheaded here. It was there are spoilers in this vlog. I guess I should throw that out now that I'm saying that. Yeah, there are spoilers. Evil Ed was beheaded. It was a well done scene. I mean, it was I'm not gonna say comical. It was cheesy. It's a very 80s horror movie. So it can be dramatic, suspenseful, action filled, and cheesy at the same time, and I love that. I mean, the serious horror fan in me likes this movie, and the cheesy 80s fan loves this movie. The gorehound in me is not very pleased. Like I said, stylized blood, you know, no blood geysers, none of that, but otherwise, every part of me that likes horror got into this in some way. Lots of violence, you know, that's pretty much where the R rating comes from, because there's no real nudity to speak of. There's a lot of sexual tension. You could say hinted sex. There's sex talked about. You know, people come from just having had sex. There's an interesting subplot, which I'm going to talk about this a little more when I talk about how much I love Amy, the girlfriend character. There's a little bit of a subplot there with her sexually. There's actually two things about her with the sex that I want to talk about when I actually get to her character. It takes place in Vegas. I don't know if the original did, but you know, that means lots of thongs, lots of lingerie. You know, there's nothing shown, no frontal nudity. I don't think there's any rear nudity either. You know, it's all very PG-13 in that section. So I would say the violence is what makes it rated R, and it's all stylized, special effects. You know, I'm not gonna say cartoony, but you know, CGI, broken bones, vampires getting fucked up. You know, if you don't like violence, you probably still won't like it, but I don't think this, I don't think there's much to get squeamish over. An example is you see a vampire's arm get fucked up, broken in 2 or 3 different places, and then heal back together. You see an arm get smashed off by a blast door, a bunker door type thing. Splash of stylized blood, the arm falls off. I'd say it's played more. I think the violence and such, I think it's played more for not comedy, but it's played more for raw entertainment value. It's not really a shock value type thing. Like I said, there's not enough blood and gore to be shock value. It's also not really done in a way to be dramatic. I mean, there's some drama to it, but it's a lot more toward the comedy, the entertainment value. It's this isn't an extremely scary movie. It's a cheesy 80s thing. It actually feels like the writing and directing is almost straight from the late 80s. You even get your action montage at the end. Don't know if that was in the original or not. Gearing up Bruce Campbell and Evil Dead 2 style. Sorry, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts as to where to go from here. Check the notes. Well, yeah. Anything else original? The plot. I'm not here to spoil a movie, but there are spoilers. But there is well, it's a remake, so the plot is sort of a driving factor, and where there are clearly things that are different. I think Amy was probably a much more involved character than she was in the original, only because I know she was written as a damsel in distress. Of course, the 80s, a lot of 80s movies are really good about their damsels in distress, so I could be very pleasantly surprised by the original, but nobody talks about Amy being anything, whatever her name is in the original, being anything other than a damsel in distress, which is why I think that's a change. But there's a bit of the drama there is, there's some it's very believable because it's mostly unoriginal. This is the same type of thing you'll come across different versions of it. There's a G-rated version, a PG-rated version, an R-rated version, choosing to save the world over sex, that type of drama. Very, very cliche, but it's also very believable. It's not dwelled on over heavily, which it's probably dwelled on less than it should be. It's one of those where the characterization takes a little bit of a backseat to the plot. Again, I say this is because it's a remake, and it obviously could be written around, but they chose to put more emphasis on sticking to the remake plot than to, people being as upset or as, or trying to rationalize their own actions as they could. It is about teenagers, so, teenagers are a little different in their attitudes, and I could see it happening, but I didn't feel this was as relatable and as realistic as it could have been for those reasons. I guess it's about time for me to talk about Amy, because that's obviously the character I keep bringing up that I keep wanting to talk about. So she's I love this character. She's the most likable character in the first 3/4 of the movie, easily. She is, I'm not gonna say she's the smart one in the relationship. She's not superficial. The main character, he's a bit more superficial. He tried to change who he was, lose his old friends in order to gain more popular ones, to make his girlfriend like him. She's basically like, her exact words were, "I knew you were a dweeb," which obviously feels a little 80s to me also, but the point is, she's the less superficial one. She's the more, she's inclined to, you know, what the hell's going on. She doesn't throw emotional fits. I don't think she was an extraordinary great actor, but I also think she had a lot of fun playing the role, and for that reason I'd like to see her in other movies. You know, it's not the type of character where you're like, wow, that was such an awesome performance, I want to see it again. It's more just like this movie. It was so enjoyable, you want to see more of it. I don't think I'm really saying everything I wanted to at this point. But for example, when they're in Peter Vincent's museum type room fighting the vampires, Amy's the one who, she fucks up the main vampire pretty badly, you know, for someone who's never fought a vampire before. She's the one who turns around and pulls out a fucking Morning Star with, okay, obviously unrealistic, but again, I'm not going to beat this like a dead horse. I've explained that. She pulls out a fucking Morning Star and beats a fucking vampire with it and knocks him off of her boyfriend so that he can fucking cut his head off. I mean, you don't get more badass than that. Now, brings to another one of my nitpicks, which is where everybody else, when they become a vampire, they keep a little bit of their own personality. You know, they speak like themselves, they have their own desires, and it seems where when she was made into a vampire, she became more of, it's like her mind was more overwritten. She became almost like a sex slave, where she's, you know, obsessed with the main vampire and everything. And you could write this off as, well, he was her bait. I mean, she was his bait. She was his, you know, definitely seen as a sexual object, you know, designed, you know, as like he obviously wanted to deflower her, which I'll get to that in a second. But, well, okay, I'll get to that now. Basically, I mentioned the whole drama issue. Basically, she was trying to have their first time, and the main character, who Chuck or Charlie, whatever you want to call him, he's like, no, I'm trying to see why my neighbor, who is going into this guy I know is a vampire's house, I'm afraid, you know, and she storms out of the room. If you know anything about the original movie, you know that she ends up surviving, so you can guess as to whether, you know, whether or not she gets that virginity loss, or if anything. Part of the thing about the sexual PG-13ness, there's no rape, thank God. I mean, I would have disliked Jerry more as a villain if he had made her into a vampire and then used mind control to rape her, but at the same time, I don't think I would have liked the movie as much. It would have been a more dramatic, more effective thing, but at the same, you know, at the same time, I'm not going to say it would have felt cheap, but it just would have brought up all the, you know, there's a lot of emotions associated in the audience with any action, and unless you're going to make it a central point, then, for example, if Jerry the vampire, if he was going to continue and become, you know, the big Dracula overlord vampire of several movies, you know, an evil, extremely despicable creature, not to say he's not evil, but if he were to be, you know, that one more step, that Voldemort, that Emperor Palpatine, if he were to go on to become a character like that, then I would say yes, taking this, you know, vampire slave's virginity would be something that might help his character along. If she were to go, you know, especially if she were to go on and become a vampire hunter type, you know, and we went through her psychological trauma with her. But remember, this was toward the end of the movie, the last third of the movie at the very least. And I think if he had gone ahead, obviously he intended to, but I think if he had gone ahead with that, it would have raised up all the anger and all that, you know, and there could not have been enough payoff. You know, him being killed 10 or 15 minutes later would have just felt really cheap. You know, her going on to live happily ever after would have been almost disgraceful. So I would have understood if they had gone that approach, but I'm glad they didn't. I think as a writer, I would have been the one to go for the over the top until someone turned around and realized in editing that it was a bad idea. Where was I? So yeah, that's a nitpick I have, is that the strongest, most enjoyable character sort of becomes this mindless sex slave as a vampire. Of course, she gets her own personality back when she's cured, but I just felt like that was too much in the way of plot convenience. So I've gone over all my three basic nitpicks. Gone over my favorite character. The effects, other than the fact that, as I mentioned, it was more cinematic and therefore less scary, less, too modern. But other than that, it was really, really awesome. There's most of the movies played out very realistically. So, it's not things you think to describe as effects. Fire, they did fire pretty well. Okay. The vampires, when their face transforms and when they do that super speed and everything, that looks ridiculous. I'm not going to lie. Those are the worst effects of the movie. I'm honestly starting, between this and the last review I finished typing up and recording, I'm almost thinking of making a segment in my reviews, worst effect of the movie award. Every movie would get that award somewhere in it. Those were the worst effects of the movie. I enjoyed the fire effects. I enjoyed the ending credits and the climax. Those were extremely well done effects. This is obviously subjective. People are going to disagree with me. I feel the ending credits were good enough to make up for the lack of opening credits. It was all filled with spoilers from the movie, so you couldn't have put that at the beginning. And I think the climax, the death of Jerry, was extremely well done. You see a vampire burst into ash because of sunlight. I think that was well done. There was a nice, it was pretty much, they definitely acknowledge the original. He was killed by a stake, but there was definitely the sunlight involved. That played a major part. There was even a part where he ducks around to dodge your sunlight in the basement, which if you haven't seen anything about the original, he's killed by a beam of sunlight going through a window. I think I've talked about most, if not all, of what I wanted to bring up. Oh, back to my first nitpick, just because I mentioned this. It's if you notice, a lot of movies, I'm not even sure this is a valid point, but it just, looking at the look of the movie, if it looks like every other 2011 movie. I mean, if you look at a 1980s movie, it's very distinct. I'm trying to. Basically, my point when I wrote my notes was that if you look at the visuals of the movie, you can't look at that and, say it looks unique. I guess my thought was basically, 300 is a modern movie. It has a very distinct look. Insidious has a very distinct look. Poltergeist has a very distinct look. Certain movies look very distinct. You could put them out. Obviously, Sin City, Night of the Living Dead, Alien. A lot of movies, you could pick any screen cap and, it's a very unique thing. You see that. That's, that movie's signature style. This movie doesn't have a signature style like that. It looks a lot like a movie made in the past 5 years. So, you could take that as a gripe or not. It's a lack of a positive. So there's, that's just part of my list of things that were not done badly, but could have been done better to make this into a better movie. I don't dislike it as a movie. I think it's a very, very good, I would probably almost go up to say great movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I'd recommend it to anybody who enjoys 80s movies, unless you cannot stand stylized blood. That's my thoughts on the Fright Night remake. I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to, just because it was a remake of an 80s movie. So, those of you who've seen the movie, I'd like to see your comments. You know, if you want to pass this video around, have people tell me if they think I'm full of shit, or if you think my opinions were spot on. You know, if you want to talk about it, you know, go ahead. I'd love to hear what you have to say.